in all of its countries. You know, this was not a slight to Scotland. Okay, it was a slight to guys who act as if they're Scottish but are not, as a ruse to extract information. So, ladies and gentlemen, the gang stalkers are switching up their tactics. Okay, they look. The orchestrators of the thing, okay, the guys at the top, the guys at ground zero, the ones that actually call the shots in this thing, the head honchos, okay? Gang stalking is a hierarchical project, okay? There are tiers. Just like there were tiers of hierarchy in MK Ultra, Operation Chaos, okay? MK Search, MK Naomi, COINTELPRO, okay, even the Zersetzung, which was run in East Germany, which we're going to talk about later, had hierarchies and tiers. If you are going to run a social engineering product, particularly one that's aimed at the degradation of the lives of its targets, you got to have hierarchies, and you got to have lots of human capital, otherwise the project folds. Okay, for fear of retaliation by the target. Okay, retaliation by the target is nullified because now you have countless persons watching the target at all times. And when I say countless, I don't mean watching him from a stationary position. I'm talking watching him from the top, from inside a high-rise apartment, watching him from long distances using scope technology, watching him from passing cars, watching him through the eyes of pedestrians that walk down the street. All of these persons, all of these watchers communicate with one another using a signaling mechanism that is all about keeping the target in their sights. If he's here, use a signal for that. If he's there, use a signal for that. If he's up there, use a separate signal to describe him, to describe his locations. If he's down there, use a separate signal to describe his locations. Okay, and this is how stalkers speak to one another. So I was just exhausted. I mean, ladies and gentlemen, now I got stalkers walking up to me using fake accents. I said to hell with the thing, you know, and I just moved on. But it just goes to show that these stalkers, they try to evolve. And right now what they're doing is they're trying to hide their signals so they're not so obvious. They're embarrassed at how seamlessly I decoded their communication network. Okay, their thuggish, hostile, unconstitutional communications network. They're stunned at how readily and how easily I decoded that and dismantled that. So what they're doing now is they're trying to change the signals, and they're trying to be a little more conscientious as to how they come off. And that's system-wide, ladies and gentlemen. They don't want, look, the orchestrators of this thing don't want it to die. Okay, whoever it is in our armed services and in our national security and intelligence apparatus that's watching, that's orchestrating, that's monitoring, that's steering this thing, they don't want this thing to perish. They want gang stalking to run forever in the background. Okay? They don't want to see anything happen to their baby, but the baby's been exposed. To hold on to it for dear life and to try to make it harder to see? I mean, that's just desperation. And it's hubris. And it's going to result in the fall of this thing, ladies and gentlemen. You just watch me. All right? Human beings are not expendable to other human beings. You can't use government resources and human capital in the form of useful idiot stooges that walk around looking for signals to throw that are going to direct them to a target that they're supposed to pester. All right, you all cannot master anybody using that garbage. You can't master anybody, period. Humans weren't made to be mastered by other humans. I think history has shown us that. Okay, not only with various mechanisms that have occurred, but with various screw-ups that have occurred as well. MK Ultra, MK Search, MK Naomi. Okay, you name it, all right? All that biological germ warfare that the U.S. Army and the CIA were using on Americans, this is indicative of that. Gang stalking, and then when you throw in the Zersetzung element, it's a spitting image of its father. All right, it's MK Ultra and the Zersetzung molded together. That's what gang stalking is, and we're going to do a little expose today, ladies and gentlemen. Zersetzung Part 2. Further examinations, and we're going to look a little bit closer at the Zersetzung, which was run in East Germany from approximately 1970 to 1990, ladies and gentlemen. And we're going to look at some of the particulars concerning this program because its goal is sort of tantamount to what gang stalking's goal is. And it's essentially running a person's life into the ground without arresting them and jailing them for life, without framing them for a murder and securing the death penalty for them, and without throwing them into a mental hospital for the rest of their life. It is basically the same concept as the death penalty, life in prison, or life in a mental institution. The Zersetzung was the same concept, but it was applied to people outdoors, out in the open, and out in the trajectory of their life. It was like incarcerating a person and letting them roam as if they were free. Okay, their jailers were the people that were assigned to them. Okay, and the prison was essentially the four walls of the very country that they lived in. All right, does that sound familiar, ladies and gentlemen? It should. That's what gang stalking is. It's a way of it's the decomposition of the quality of life, the standard of living for a targeted person, minus the prison, minus the death penalty, minus the mental institution. Okay, it's basically just it's destruction. Okay, it's utter chaos outdoors. It's called open air decomposition. Okay, and your fellow man, your fellow citizens, they are the actors in your personal false flag operation, your personal cataclysm. So here's what we're going to look at, ladies and gentlemen. We have a number of things to look at. We're going to look at the Anne files. We're going to look at the Stasi scanner incident. We're going to look at the Telecommunications Amendment Act of 2015 in Australia. And we're going to look at confirmed victims of Zersetzung and what their lives were like. But first we're going to look at the Anne Gollin files. Anne Gollin is Annegollin, first name Anne, last name Gollin. We're going to look at the Anne Gollin files. And the reason these files are important is because this was the first time, I believe in recorded history, that Stasi Zersetzung files on a person were made public. Okay, if you were put in a Zersetzung, which is basically what you might refer to as an East German gang stalking campaign, and these have been documented. These have been documented. These are not speculative documents. These are actual Stasi documents that contain the particulars of what you might refer to as an East German gang stalking campaign against a woman named Anne Gollin. Okay, the Stasi were they were basically like a secret police that had units of paramilitary officers that acted as the actual police. So it was basically a police force, a paramilitary force, an espionage unit, and basically an early manifestation of gang stalking all rolled up into one. Okay, that's what the Stasi was. And when it was ordered by the director of the Stasi. To put a person in a Zersitzung, that was basically a lifelong open-air torment mechanism, a psychological warfare mechanism, but also a physiological warfare mechanism.